I guess we'll briefly talk about the Jason Momoa Aquaman pick. We got our first look at what Jason Momoa is going to look like as Aquaman in Batman vs Superman. What do you think about it, Vince?
Well, I mean, the pick looks good. I mean, it's done well. I mean, I'm not excited about that guy playing Aquaman because he wasn't a very good Conan, but
that's not his fault, I don't think.
Oh, that's fair. I mean, I think he's just cast poorly in that movie. But.
I don't think he's cast poorly in this. I like that pick for him. And I've seen Jason Momoa in more stuff than you have.
Oh yeah,
is the thing. He was one of the main characters in Stargate Atlantis. Ironically, I think that's
amazing.
Hilarious. And I liked him a lot in that. He's gonna have to be a little spoken, no nonsense Aquaman, but considering that what they seem to be doing with this franchise is really self-serious and really super no nonsense, he seems like exactly the right pick for it. I wish they'd lighten up and have more fun with it. A lot of people were complaining that oh look, another thing with no color. But for the franchise they're doing, I think he's a great pick.
You know, another thing with no color is fine for Batman, whatever. But keeping all of these super colorful characters, Aquaman, whatever. I mean, who cares? Do something completely different because he has kind of a bad reputation among the general public anyway. But do something completely different. They did that with Blade, you know, the proverbial day, and it turned out well. But I kind of want colors for Wonder Woman and Superman. And
but what we're looking at there is not completely different.
Yeah, I mean, he still has the scale mail. He still has a trident. I mean,
yeah, a lot of people are saying that he looks like Peter David's Aquaman. I mean, like we've seen an Aquaman that looks very similar to this, minus the tattoos.
Yeah. I don't care at all that he's not blonde.
No, I don't either. That's fine. I think it's a good look. I like that it's kind of tribal. I think it's fun, if this is true, I've read this, I don't know how true this is, I think it's fun that some of the tattoos that he has are just tattoos Jason Momoa has.
That's fair.
He's got a lot of tattoos. I read that somewhere, I don't know if that's true. But I don't know, I think the trident looks really super sweet.
Yeah.
But it's neat that he's got like the thicker chainmail on one side with like the big shoulder pad. We've seen that a lot with Aquaman. I'm looking forward to seeing what these guys finally look like without this lack of color filter on them, because Wonder Woman's initial picture I thought also looked like it had been maybe toned down color wise for publicity shots, and that when we actually got into the movie it might not quite look like that. Having said that, I saw the teaser trailer that was at Comic-Con months back, and it hasn't been released publicly yet, and it looks like they're going with a pretty stylistic darker filter, much more so even than we had in Man of Steel, but it looks more stylized, more comic book, and I was excited by the look. I thought it looked really comic book. Like, it doesn't look realistic at all, and it looks like there's much more of kind of an iconic Unreal kind of feel, and it's they're deriving a lot, obviously story wise from what we know, and I'm sure tonally from Frank Miller, and it had that vibe a little bit, and it being Zack Snyder, that makes a lot of sense because he made 300. It was sort of like if you had a 300 looking Batman Superman, and I know you didn't like 300, but you got to give me that could look really cool.
Yeah, well, I thought 300 looked great. I just thought it was bare bones, and it was basically just fighting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 300 was a lot of fun, but I wouldn't necessarily call it a good movie by narrative standards.
Yeah, well, it's playing by some different rules, but I won't argue with you about 300. It's not my favorite thing or anything. But I always knew you. I remember you always saying that you didn't really care for that movie, but I didn't realize that you didn't mind the style of it.
Yeah, and that's the only movie that Zack Snyder's done his ridiculous slow motion in that I didn't mind. Because, in fact, Watchmen, I thought it was overplayed. I was annoyed with how much he used it in Watchmen. However,
you're still wrong.
No. However,
you're still very wrong.
However, I think that Man of Steel would have benefited from it because his characters are super fast. It only makes sense that you would use slow motion.
Yep.
So, what the heck, Zack Snyder?
I still say that was the whole point in Watchmen, was that those characters had gotten to where they could move fast enough that you had to slow some of it down.
Well, I mean, most of them are just average people, and that's kind of the point, is that your Superman is,
Yeah. You're right.
Mr. Manhattan, or Dr. Right. Manhattan, rather.
Mr. Manhattan, yeah.
Mr. Midnight.
He drinks a lot of Manhattan. But anyway,
he likes Cosmos too.
My whole thing, of course, continues to just be: are we really shoehorning this many characters in this movie?
Yeah.
And let's hope they can pull it off. It just strikes me right now, and we'll see what it looks like. I'm just giving my gut reaction to this stuff. It just strikes me right now is trying to throw too much in one movie. It's like we're trying so hard to catch up to Marvel that we have to both introduce a lot of characters and do our setup Justice League movie right away before we've even had Justice League. Now, having said that, if the movie actually manages to pull it off, and it's a decent introduction for these characters, and introduces them without having to give them all character arcs, and I don't know if I buy they'll do that. That would be the way to do this, right? Would be introduce some of these characters with whatever threat you have, and then we don't actually have to get to know them that hard yet. If the movie is making it clear enough that it is the beginning of a multi-chapter story, as much as what you do is you take Batman and Superman, and it's their movie, and they have the character arcs. Dual protagonists, they have the character arcs. I hope they're dual protagonists. They have the character arcs, and then you introduce some other characters, but you've just introduced them. And I'm sure people will say, "Oh, we didn't get enough screen time for X, Y, and Z." But you have to look at it as a multi-chapter, and that's part of the reason that I still don't agree with people that say that a lot of the Avengers didn't get enough screen time, because it is a complete story, but it's also the first chapter of a longer narrative, and so you can bring some of these people in for the first time and just introduce us to them. It doesn't have to be their story yet, and that's what I'm hoping they're doing with this. At the same time, I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I don't know if they'll be smart enough to do it that way.
In my head, I kind of wonder. I don't know anything. I'm just spitballing here. But I look at something like this, and it seems like if Batman's going to be the guy that's going to Superman and trying to decide whether or not Superman's a loose cannon or too powerful, then I wonder if maybe he's not like contacting, not necessarily world leaders, but world powers.
Interesting.
And maybe that's where Aquaman comes in, because of Atlantis and the mascara with Wonder Woman. And
what you don't want is for them to be shoehorned in. You don't want them to come out of nowhere and it'd be really super convenient that they just happen to show up. And considering that some of the convenient plot points of Man of Steel, I think there's reason to be a little bit concerned about that.
The thing about Man of Steel that makes me kind of wonder why we're connecting this to that movie is that, whatever, quality is not the thing that I'm wondering here. We just had a movie that was huge and nearly earth-shattering.
Yeah, it was earth-shattering.
And then you have, literally earth-shattering. And then you have people that are super-powered that seem to be absent from this movie.
Yeah.
And essentially,
why weren't they there? Why didn't they think to come help?
So it would almost make...
Now that's always a comic problem, and a lot of people will complain when, and I say that sometimes too, a lot of people will complain and say, well, you just have to give them that, because if you're going to have a multi-character universe, but you want to tell a story about one character, well, but then does it have to be on that kind of scale? Does it have to be on that kind of scale?
It shouldn't be that on that kind of scale.
How about you do Zod next time when you have all the...
And that's the argument against having a big universe full of these characters.
How about instead of... And I think that's something that we've gotten right for the most part in the Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of... is that we started with the first character who did any of this stuff, and the other people just weren't even around yet to do anything, really, right? Like, are there any exceptions to that? Captain America's frozen in ice. Thor isn't going back and forth to Midgard yet. And then you've got SHIELD with some of these other superpower characters who assign people to go do things.
Yeah. You have your eggs in other baskets.
We're seeing the evolution of these characters, and we're seeing these characters like form a group and happen for the first time. Well, with Justice League, where are these characters that they're not being involved in things like that? But then it could work, certainly, where you've got Aquaman, he's in Atlantis, it could be the same thing as Thor. He's not concerned with the surface world, for whatever reason. Wonder Woman, same way. She's not concerned with our civilization. Look at Themyscira, almost like another planet, right?
Yeah. I kind of wonder if there's not a
same thing with Green Lantern. Depending on how we do Green Lantern, if he's even going to be in the Justice League movie.
Aquaman, though, if we're talking about fault lines and stuff, he's at the bottom of the ocean. But if something starts tearing up the planet, surely it affects the ocean floor.
You could make the argument that and you don't know what exactly is going on there, but you could you could make the argument that Superman like fixed the problem fast enough that nobody even had a chance to respond to it.
I suppose
because it's not like it's over a period of weeks.
Yeah,
but
I'll give you that.
But I think it would have been neat, and I'm saying this in hindsight, obviously, but instead of I said we were going to talk about this briefly. This has been more than briefly. Wouldn't it have been cool if, again, in hindsight, wouldn't it have been cool if instead of doing Brainiac in the Justice League movie, which I think is what they're talking about doing, and that just sounds like kind of the obvious thing to do, we did Justice League versus Zod? I mean, wouldn't it be really cool to have your movie like kind of revolve around Superman as the leader, and then everybody else is kind of your supporting cast, and then you have like a major Superman. Yeah, okay, Brainiac's a major Superman villain, but he's also a major Justice League villain. Okay, maybe I'm being stupid right now because Brainiac. You can have that with Brainiac also. They could totally. I'm just sick of Brainiac. He's like he shows up
like
everywhere.
I'm
getting kind of tired. And also, we're having Lex Luthor in this movie, so I can only assume that we're going to have a Lex Luthor Brainiac team up. Maybe they won't do that. I don't know. I don't have anything to work with right now. I'm just trying to guess based on what I see a lot in comics and recently.
Since they're kind of trying to base this style on the Batman Begins thing. Not to say that they're using that. I'm not dumb, but they're using this kind of dark style.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. No. I still say there's no reason Man of Steel couldn't have been in the Begins Dark Knight continuity.
So you have this kind of Nolan-verse style to the whole thing, and then.
But I do think they're maybe getting away from that a little bit. I guess we'll see.
I think they should call Batman versus Superman Inception, Dawn of the Justice League. I think that's what they should call it.
No, they should call it Inception of the Justice League. Can we just get rid of the word Dawn, please?
Yeah, it's soap. It's clean.
Do we need that at all? I guess.
Why not Gain of the Justice League?
It could be cool again to introduce these characters and then have the team sort of beginning to form or whatever, so that when we actually do a Justice League movie, it doesn't have to be the Avengers-type origin thing where it's all about these characters getting together in the first place. I thought that was handled decently well, but do I need to see it the exact same kind of thing with Justice League? No, I don't. I would love to see it another way. I still say that doing a Justice League movie first and then branching off and doing a bunch of single movies might have been a good idea, just because it's the opposite of what Marvel did. But
I kind of feel like what they ought to do.
It's hard to tell until you've seen how they do it. And again, you can make anything work. So I just need to see what you're gonna do with it before I can really. So I'm wasting time. It's cool. We have an hour.
I feel like what they ought to do here is use the whole world powers thing, like maybe these things that were secretive, the Atlantis or the Themyscira, you have these world leaders and world powers come out of hiding and come into the public sphere. Now that the Earth is kind of galactically recognized because of the whole Zod thing. And now the Earth has to be united with the Deep Sea because it affected them. So all of these people come out of the cracks and start trying to unite. And then, so we have this big question of this guy that just saved the planet. And that's how are we going to handle this? And now we have world leaders that are like, regular terrestrial world leaders are freaked out because now we have myths and we have Atlantis and we have like the the Green Lantern Corps. All these people have a presence on this planet now. So this is where Batman comes in, because he's recognizing that this is a problem. All of the world leaders, and plus ones that weren't even recognized beforehand because of their secrecy, are questioning this guy's validity as a hero or as being too powerful to exist. So now he has to do some recon. That seems like the only way they can do this movie and introduce everybody at the same time.
Yeah, it's a great point. You almost see. I keep envisioning it as they'll all show up in the third act. You kind of want them to all start popping up right at the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like they have to. Because if you start just putting everybody at the third act, you might as well put them at the end of the credits.
Yeah. Well, and who knows? Maybe they'll do that too. This would not be the first time that we've gotten publicity shots for characters that didn't show up until the very end of a movie or even in credits or whatever, right? I mean, we all thought Amazing Spider-Man 2 was going to actually have Rhino in it, I really like what you just said. You made me think of this, Vince. There is inherently a really cool kind of like turning the Stranger in a Strange Land story on its head thing with Justice League if you put the right team together. How many stories are written about an alien that has to deal with being amongst humans and trying to figure out how to integrate and fit in? What if what if you made Batman your one human being in the middle of a team of aliens trying to deal with all the alien stuff messing with Earth, where he's the only person who is purely 100% human, and he's been fighting for justice. He's been fighting for the good of the people for all these years, because we know he's an older Batman. He's been fighting for the good of people under the radar without anybody knowing it. He's kind of like the Black Ops of superheroes. He's like under everything without anybody knowing about it. And then all of a sudden, he's forced to work with people like out in the open who have a stake in the planet, but not in the same way. They're kind of alien to him. Now Aquaman would still be like a person of Earth, and so would Wonder Woman. But both of them have different stakes because they're of regions that are almost like alien realms. Mm-hmm. And there's inherently a cool story there.
So Batman is almost like the liaison, and he's trying to like protect Earth, like protect mankind, just by collecting information, because he's the detective, right? So
yeah,
he has to know how to defeat a threat so he teams up with the threat.
Yeah, while simultaneously not trusting anyone.
I like that idea.
And you have a story that's about, and I don't mean to just sit here and write this movie, but it just seems like that might be a cool story to tell. Where we do kind of what Marvel's been doing, but in a very different way, where we attack cynicism head on. Because that's what you do with superhero fiction now. Because superheroes used to be, much lighter and less realistic, and the whole idea was it's escapist. They don't have to be realistic. The idea is, what do we want the world to be like? And we can feel safer because we can pretend like we're in this world where there's these people that do no wrong, and they help us out. If you have Batman amongst these people, he doesn't trust any of them, but he's trying to be idealistic and hold up these principles. I don't know. That would be a really cool way to kind of attack some of the same ideas Avengers did, but in a very different way.
I think that's a great idea, mainly because it would kind of help destroy some of these ridiculous ideas that he can do it because he's Batman. Well, Batman can defeat anybody because he's already prepared. Well, let's see the preparation.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, show it to me. That's what I loved about Batman Begins, was that we actually see him get there.
Mm-hmm. So he joins the Justice League, and we see him preparing because he's the central character, as opposed to just being along for the ride and being good at hitting things with his batarangs and gadgets.
Well, Batman's always treated as, like, in some ways, the most inhuman of humanity, and trying to uphold humanity, because he is able to do all these amazing things that most people would never be able to do because he's obsessed. And there's always that question of, is he as unhinged as his villains, right? Wouldn't it be really interesting to take that idea, but then in contrast with all of these almost alien-like characters, he's the most human of them. And like we could potentially see the most human Batman we've ever seen. Where like he comes to like care about people on more of an individual level in a way he never did before, because of what the stakes look like, and because he's having to, he almost like you called him an ambassador. He almost has to like treat alien type being, or like teach alien type beings how to care about people on more of a human level. And then what would that do for him versus what he's been like before? So we've seen so many different iterations of Batman, and we've been with Batman so much, we know who this character is, and all they have to do is make it evident what kind of Batman he's been for all these years, and you could immediately have a Batman that starts to take on like this, like a very different kind of air. Because he's dealing with alien threats and has never had to deal with that before. I mean, there's a movie here.
Yeah, I think
if they do it right.
I think we're likely to see Batman try to take down Superman, or try to keep Superman under control, while looking at Aquaman and realizing that some of these guys who have political ideals and political ideas that they're trying to protect their own nations versus other nations would be more of a threat, because there's an ulterior motive, as opposed to Superman, who just wants to protect.
And of course, your main villain in this movie is Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to expect some kind of political through line.
Mm-hmm.
And then isn't that interesting if you make Batman your most human character, and it's like he's dealing with all this huge alien stuff, but then his big villain in the movie is a human.
Yeah. I think they're likely to make Superman the most human character.
I think they're likely to try to force that, because people complain so hard that he didn't seem human enough in the first movie, but I don't know if they'll manage it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yep.
That could be really forced. I guess we'll see.
Intent and intent and success
And
are two different
execution
things.
are very different. Yeah, there's concept versus execution.
The execution of Zod.
We'll see where it goes. Well, let's move on. And meanwhile, I will never use the word brief again. And